Today, 4 women took the stand in court facing the Flint man they say kidnapped and repeatedly sexually assaulted them. Gilbert Conway is now facing 160 criminal charges as 7 of his 12 cases now head to trial. Now, we don't usually release the identity of sexual assault victims, but one woman wants her story told. In an ABC 12 investigation, our Ann Perrette has more on what the woman endured and how it feels to finally be believed.
I still can't go places alone. You know, I have a big fear that it's going to happen again.
Tara Ranowicki was scrolling through her Facebook page last month when she saw this face pop up on her screen.
That's a face of evil. You don't forget that.
She'd soon learn the face that's haunted her since March 9th, 2013 belongs to Gilbert Conway.
I'd been waiting almost 6 years for this guy to be caught, and I didn't know how much longer this would have went on.
Flint police arrested the 60-year-old in July on more than a dozen criminal charges, including kidnapping, criminal sexual conduct, and assault with intent to do great bodily harm. They also found more than 700 videotapes inside his home that look like these, which could reveal dozens to hundreds more victims.
There was anger, a lot of anger. There were a lot of what ifs, a lot of anxiety, sadness. I was sad because, I realized that unfortunately I'm not the only person he had done this to.
Ranowicki moved to Ohio shortly after the traumatic assault. We traveled to her new home to hear her story.
I no longer felt safe. I didn't feel there was any corner of Michigan I could go hide in where I wouldn't be found.
Ranowicki says Conway beat and raped her for more than 12 hours at this home on Stanford Avenue in Flint. To this day, she still has no idea how she got there.
I mean, from the moment I woke up until I don't know how many hours later, I endured some pretty horrible things.
Ranowicki says she had left a day of training at her new job and was joining her brother for a drink at Classics Bar in Burton to celebrate his birthday. She says it wasn't unusual for people to send her drinks, which she now fears is how she lost control.
Some people blame the way women dress. I was in jeans and a t-shirt with a hoodie, so couldn't have been that. I just think when there's a predator among us and they see something they want, they take the measures that need to be taken to achieve their twisted goal.
A goal Ranowicki says she fought hard to not let Conway achieve.
I was screaming at the top of my lungs for help, hoping that if it was a house, maybe somebody else was there, or if it was an apartment, maybe a neighbor would hear me. And he had told me, that if I didn't quiet down, that he would kill me.
But Ranowicki wouldn't give up the fight, even grabbing a knife she found on a table in the bedroom. She says she was thinking of her then 2-year-old son, Harley.
I figured if I was going to lose my life, I wasn't going to go out just sitting here. I'm going to fight for it.
Ranowicki says Conway did eventually release her from this house, dropping her off just a few blocks from her home. She says the whole drive, he made her crouch on the floorboards of the front passenger seat. She complied, but says she kept an eye out for any landmarks that would help her report this location to police. She returned home to find her now husband had already filed a missing persons report.
The Burton police were called back to my house. I was, at the time, in hysterics, beaten and bruised.
When she thought the trauma was over, Ranowicki says it got even worse.
I was called a liar for remembering so many details of what I had just experienced, and they refused to file a report for the assault and told me that I need to go file it with a different police station and referred me to the Flint Police Department.
Ranowicki spoke with the Flint police officers at the hospital while undergoing a sexual assault forensic exam. But it would take 5 years before detectives linked that report to Conway, leading to 10 more criminal charges against him. this time for her.
I kind of felt that I would never see justice, or it wasn't worth bringing it up, so I buried it. And when this all came out, it brought a slew of emotions. It was very hard to process everything, to wrap my head around the whole ideology that this was actually happening.
Someone finally believed her.
I just hope anybody else that has come in contact with him, who may have experienced anything with Conway, at least comes forward. Somebody might not have believed you then, but I promise somebody will believe you now, even if it's just me. I'll believe you.
And Burton Police is not commenting on her case, saying that it was and continues to be a Flint Police case.
You know, Ann, it's just kind of difficult, to wrap your head around why it took so long for Conway to be caught.
It is, and Ranowicki asked me those same questions. Why weren't notes compared among detectives, and why weren't any of these women taken seriously over the years? And I will explore that tonight in an ABC 12 investigation at 11.
Thank you, Ann.
160 criminal charges for kidnapping, torturing, and raping at least 12 women. Flint police caught Gilbert Conway in July, but they believe there could be dozens to hundreds more victims on the videotapes they found inside his home. Our top story tonight is an ABC 12 investigation. Ann Perrette asks why the accused serial rapist wasn't stopped after the first woman came forward 10 years ago.
It has affected every aspect of my life, trying to go somewhere is, I sit at red lights and, who's going to jump out of their car. And it's a constant barrage of how can this hurt me? Who is going to grab me?
Tara Ranowicki has been living on edge for nearly 6 years, but now she wants her story told, speaking out publicly to ABC 12.
I didn't know him, never seen him before in my life. I didn't know his name, didn't know anything about him.
But she says she woke up in Gilbert Conway's home March 9th, 2013, covered in bruises. She believes he raped her at least 6 times.
I was ready to make life or death decisions because at that time I was unsure if I was going to leave that house with my life.
When Ranowicki first learned in October Conway had been caught, she says she couldn't leave her couch for 2 weeks as the memories of the pain she experienced flooded back to her.
There was a feeling of relief, but there's been a lot of anger because I just want to go and scream at every person. I told you.
Because she says no one believed her. Not police, not her family, which pushed her and her husband to move hundreds of miles away to a small town in Ohio.
I was in a downward spiral of using alcohol, trying to drown out the pain and the memories. I had to get away from there. I was destroying myself, and it was destroying my life.
A life she struggled to put back together over the past 5 years.
There were times where I took drastic measures. Thankfully, I'm still here. But it tears at your life in every conceivable way possible. And if you let it, it will tear you to shreds. And it almost did with me. I bear the scars of the choices I've made because of what he's put me through.
Not just her, but Flint police say at least 11 other women too. To date, Gilbert Conway is facing more than 150 criminal charges. The Genesee County prosecutor says he kidnapped, raped, tortured, and threatened to kill all 12 women. Sometimes the abuse lasted for 2 to 3 days. Their cases date back to May 2008. 10 years ago.
How did this slip through the cracks for so long?
Flint police caught Conway in July, and prosecutor David Layton says the pieces started coming together.
As part of the investigation, Flint police went to his home and discovered a cache of videotapes, some of them on the old style VHS tapes, some of them on a more modern style but still old called High 8.
8 hours of footage per tape. Layton believes could reveal dozens to hundreds more victims. The more than 800 tapes were digitized, and police are now watching, working to track down the women in them.
So that everybody can have justice, so that everybody can have their day in court and their voice can be heard.
But Conway's defense attorney Archie Heyman is wondering what's different about those tapes now. He says his client was arrested in 2008 on similar charges, and police confiscated those tapes then.
They were looked at. Apparently there was nothing untoward that was seen on those tapes because they were given back to him.
And Conway was let go.
Back in 2008, at that point, the police did not feel there was probable cause to believe that a crime had been committed. I think there was some issue with the statements that may have been made by the victim.
Since then, prosecutors now argue Conway would continue to prey on women for the next decade. The 12 cases against him so far include dates in 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2013, 2015, 2016, and 2018.
Me and so many other victims, we wouldn't be victims. We wouldn't have to live our lives the way we do.
Ranowicki says maybe not everyone came forward at the time, but she wonders why the ones like her who did weren't taken seriously.
They dropped the ball. I mean, what more can be said? Somebody dropped the ball, you know? And because of it, there's a lot of women out there suffering and hurting. And because they're suffering and hurting, so are their children, and so are their family members and their friends.
And it was a different time. This is 2018, and we are taking each and every sexual assault case seriously. We're weighing the credibility of all parties involved, and we will pursue for justice when appropriate.
Ranowicki says that doesn't save her from the anxiety she still experiences every day.
I do breathe a little easier, but at the same time, they're bated breaths. You know, it's very guarded, and I'm always looking for the next potential predator.
Ranowicki says she's hopeful sharing her story will help other women come forward. She's reached out to and formed a network with some of the other victims. She says they're supporting each other through the court hearings.
Laterra was one of 4 accusers who took the stand in court today. They are the latest of the 12 victims to come forward, forcing Gilbert Conway to stand trial on a total of 31 additional criminal charges. One of the women says Conway repeatedly raped her nearly a decade ago in July 2009. During today's proceedings, none of them looked at Conway, struggling to relive the abuse.